Web3.tv.
Forgive me for asking questions that may sound controversial.
No problems.
Is there manipulation that takes place in the trading floor?
It says it on the bottom of most brokers' websites, 70% of all customers will lose money. I'm not saying manipulation hasn't happened.
Right, but you can understand why questions around this would arise. Are people in a position to be trading if they're not expert? And they're taking leverage trades.
Yeah.
They're ruining lives.
If you look at how traders actually traded then compared to they traded now,
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Traders Brawl podcast. My name is Adel. I'm the founder. Here we bring in guests every week to bring in new insights on entrepreneurship and fitness with financial freedom. In today's guest, we have David Freeman, which I'm about to get into in a second. But for those who are new, welcome. And for those who are staying with us, thank you for staying with us. We hope we provide value in the entrepreneurial space. David, how are you doing today?
very well, thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to read out your bio so the audience know more about you.
Go ahead.
Today we're joined by David Freeman, who has spent years helping brands sharpen their identity, and now he's putting that skill to work in one of the sharpest arenas there is, capital markets. David, you currently lead brand and strategy at Goldstone Group, a next-gen investment firm reshaping how capital meets opportunity in frontier and emerging markets. With a strong focus on tech, finance, and growth stage companies, you spent the last 9 months positioning Goldstone not just as a fund, but as a force. You're blending brand architecture with market strategy to help founders tell the kind of story that makes investors lean in. David, welcome to the Traders Brawl podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I think I wanted to get you on this side of the education side because we haven't had a person coming from capital markets in Forex in a while. I'd like you to give a bit of an introduction and context as to how you came to Dubai and found this job.
Yeah. So I've been in the industry in several forms for 20 odd years. Very first started out in London at a broker called Goldstone Securities, which was really the first retail, or one of the first retail-facing brokers. It was a gateway from an institutional liquidity solution where people without hundreds, if not millions of pounds, could bring 10 grand, stick it on a trading account, and have access to proper liquidity, something that you can trade on a day-to-day basis and actually make some money from. That company went from leaps and bounds to a ginormous organisation, eventually selling to FXCM, which was another big entity in the market. And then from there, I spent a few years in the physical delivery industry, which is, once again, trading. But we execute payments for corporates, SMEs. We used to do some individuals as well at the time. And then eventually started my own brokerage for a few years and ended up selling that by the time I was about 27. So, been in the markets for a long time, have a lot of connections in this industry. I've come from a family of brokers,
Right.
so it was inevitable that I was going to end up probably doing this at some point. And to be honest with you, it was always my dream to sort of follow in the footsteps of my aunt and uncle. So. And then, for the last few years, I've done several things. I set up a cryptocurrency, physical delivery sort of blend, where we used to do fiat into cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency payments for institutions and corporates. Got approached by the Goldstone Group to come and run commercials for them. Was in conversations for the last 18 months and said, let's go. So I've been doing it ever since.
Brilliant. It's clear that you live and breathe capital markets.
Yeah.
You've helped shape brand identities. So what's the one buzzword you wish you could ban from every founder pitch forever?
I don't know. There is quite a few of them. To be honest with you, there is such an evolving lexicon of words that you do have to sort of adapt to. Generationally, you see, every 5 years, half a generation, a quarter of a generation, depending on how you look at it, you see a whole new breed of person in this industry. And you see new brands, and you see, new colleagues that you work with who have gone through a whole different schooling background, and they've gone from universities where the curriculum changes, and the buzzwords sort of come and then they go. Right. So it's hard to sort of pick out one. I think if you start getting aggravated by buzzwords, I think you're already putting yourself at a slight disadvantage, to be honest with you. I think you really do have to learn to adopt these things, adopt what the understanding exactly is of that, because I think from a standpoint of someone who's a bit longer in the tooth like I am, you put a certain value against a word, which probably doesn't necessarily reflect what the person's saying here, saying to you. So I don't know. I'm not one for really having many issues with things.
Yeah, fair.
But there is, like I say, quite a few of them out there at the moment.
Now, turning our attention to Goldstone. For those who may not be very familiar, what is Goldstone all about?
So Goldstone is a retail brokerage. We give access to our underlying clients to equities, both European, UK, US equities, commodities, gold, oil, gas, corn, all the traditional markets like that, Forex, Bitcoin as well, cryptocurrency, leverage trading, of course, which is something now that's getting adopted by the physical or the exchanges.
So you're like an eToro?
Very much so, yeah. We're an award-winning social trading platform as well. That's obviously one of the key offerings for us. From a standpoint of our underlying clients, we can't give them investment advice.
Of course.
But weirdly enough, what is accepted by regulators is we can have our underlying clients give investment advice, or at least giving them a way to follow their trading strategy. Our particular offering on that front won an award this year. So yeah, it's the way that I see it, it's a gateway to the marketplace.
Fair enough. Okay. So now, curious, when you entered this, and do you recommend that others enter this space?
100%.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's several ways that you should be investing. Obviously, bricks and mortar is a key one. There is a lot of online talk about, not buying a property now, renting, that money can do better elsewhere. I'm quite old school. I was raised by my mum and my nan and my granddad in the same house. So I think investing in bricks and mortar is always a must. It's somewhere that if it all goes to pot, you can go home and there's a roof over your head.
There's a roof over your head.
Exactly. I think second to that is there is like the standard, like S&P models where you just, put in 10% of your earnings to a tracker fund and things like that. But it's definitely a place for you to invest yourself. I think working on the fly is important. You sit down, you've got your finger on the pulse of what interests you. That's number one. Being able to then go on your phone, execute a trade and think, I think gold's going to move in a certain direction over the next coming months, coming weeks, coming days, coming hours. I think having that possibility at the fingertips, A, is important, but B, is exciting, it's enjoyable, A lot of people invest in, I've got to speak to my investment manager this week. When you're your own investment manager, I think it's quite exciting, to be honest.
Interesting. Now, when it comes to the trading, and forgive me for asking questions that may sound controversial.
No problems.
Is there manipulation that takes place in the trading floor?
No. There is a misconception in trading. One of the biggest misconceptions from a retail standpoint is people think they're trading the market. 95% of most of brokers out there mostly internalize 70-80% of the flow that they're receiving from their retail base. And what that means is instead of passing that trade on to the market, they will see the other side of that trade. Just like a bookmaker. A bookmaker will give you a price of 10-1 that Ricky Hatton, showing my age there, is going to beat Manny Pacquiao, and instead of passing it off to a market and sort of taking a spread on that. So, what would happen is, from a client book, maybe 70% or whatever. It says it on the bottom of most brokers' websites. 70% of all customers will lose money.
Right. I know.
You can go on eToro, you can go on IG. It says it at the bottom. From a business standpoint, why would you then pass that off to the market? So a lot of big brokers, they will see the other side of that market. And their clients' losses are their gains. And then in turn, if they go off and make $1 million, they pay their customers out. We're a different kind of brokerage. We're an STP brokerage, which is straight through processing. What that means for us is we'll earn a small spread. We have liquidity providers dotted around the globe, but certainly in London, where 90% of all FX flow goes. and we will just pass it off to them. What they do with it, if they internalize it, that's up to them. But from a standpoint of our underlying customers, we don't bet against them. So we have a small markup or a commission, depending on our groups, because we have a raw group, which means we give you exactly what we're giving, but there's a fixed commission. And then there's a spread group where we put a little bit of markup on there, and it's all sort of built into the price. So for us, we make dollar per million. You know, we're all about growth via volume. And that obviously feeds into the fact that we've got a social copy trading system, because for us it's, you know, we don't mind if customers are profitable. For us it's all about the flow. You know, if we've got a really good individual who's making good consistent gains over the space of 3, 6, 12 months, we'll point our customers in their direction. You know, there'll be a preferred trader on our system. You know, most brokers wouldn't want to do that, because that means you're turning one profitable client into 100 profitable clients, or if not 1,000 profitable clients, which can actually go against you. So, yeah, it's. I'm not saying manipulation hasn't happened.
Right, but you can understand why questions around this would arise.
Yeah,
right?
I can.
As someone who's been in the industry for an amount of time.
Yeah. It's funny because I actually know it's debatable where it all started, but I certainly know one of the founding people who started off that model. That model is called a B-book model.
B-book model.
Yeah.
Why is it called a B-book model?
Because A-book is your profitable people. That's where it goes straight through to the market, and then you get the B-book side of the business where it's internalized. But it was a guy that was a young guy from UBS in the late 80s. And back then, retail traders couldn't access liquidity from the banks. It just wasn't a thing, unless you was, you know, like a family office or something like that. So what he started doing is he had the line himself, left UBS. He was a bit of a whiz kid himself. He could still get off trades. So he started doing cash trades for people in Dubai, actually, and in Venezuela, weirdly enough. And he would set up literally a desk in the street, and people would come down and say, you know, there's $1,000. Can you place this trade for me? It's sort of like a bookmaker would. Similar model to us, taking maybe $10 per 1,000. Quickly realised that 80%, 90% of these people were losing their money. So instead of actually ringing up UBS and executing the trade, he would just say, yeah, fine, you can have that, putting the money in his pocket and then laying out whatever profits were made. That guy ended up being a massive client of ours at Goldstone Securities, and actually maybe 10 other brokers, but had billions and billions on account with us, and was running a lot of these positions himself for his underlying business. And it ended up spurring a lot of these bigger brokerages' growth, to be honest with you, because from there it became a much more viable business model. You know, if you look at things just strictly from a volume basis, you need a hell of a lot of volume unless you need a big spread. The second you can go down the chain to the retail investor, where it's not $1 billion on account from a bank or you know, some sort of big corporate, and you're talking $10,000. When you're running the other side of that market, if someone drops 8,000 with you and you've got 1,000 customers, and then you've made 8 million that month. So yeah, that is essentially what this market's built on. Hence the reason there's so many brokers out there. Hence the reason that the marketing strategy is fairly aggressive. But it makes sense as well, right, from a standpoint of you know, a corporate strategy. You know, if that is the case, and to be honest with you, it's not at the detriment of the underlying client. It actually helps the underlying client if they are on the B book, because I'm giving away some industry secrets there. I'll probably be assassinated by morning. You're getting much better execution because it's not going through to the market. You're not waiting for the market to fill the other side of the trade. So you're getting much more snappier execution. You're getting better pricing.
Right.
But if you start becoming very profitable and your spreads start going wider, and you know why? It's because you've been moved over to the open.
But are brokers? Is it true that brokers can trade against what the users are trading, and they can sort of say, oh, you're trading this, so I might short that, and I make money off of that.
There is no need, right? If you're taking the other side of that trade, and 70% of people lose, then if you run a book that's big enough over a certain amount of time, then 70% of whatever traded is going to lose to the market. So you're just going to make 70%. The second you're trading the other side of it, you've essentially crystallized that profit. So the second, if like for example, do you know what I mean? You've hedged it, so your loss is your gain, and your
because it's a zero-sum game.
Is it exactly that? So it doesn't actually quite work like that. But I know that's the thought process for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't quite work like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because there have been questions about manipulation. That's why I wanted to iron this out
Yeah.
for the audience, for myself. I've been using eToro for some time. I love the copy trade aspect of it.
Yeah, it's great.
The social aspect of it. And you have a similar model, is that right?
Yeah,
Copy trade?
Yeah, we have a copy trading system. Like I say, award-winning. It's our pride at the moment because it just looks after the underlying customer as much as possible. I've been on both sides of this industry. You know, I've worked to bring in losing traders. You know, you don't look for them specifically. It just comes as like part of the basket of the business that you bring in. But actually being in this space where we can look after traders, you know, come and use our copy trading system, follow people who know what they're doing, and we do well out of it, is the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. No, thank God for the copy trade, because say without this, are people in a position to be trading if they're not experts?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can flip a coin 10 times and get it 9 times right, but it's unlikely, you know?
Right.
There's so many variables.
Yeah, and they're taking leverage trades.
Yeah.
They're rooting lives.
Heavily leveraged.
Heavily leveraged.
Yeah. I mean, we have leverage up to 500 to 1. You know, you can put $1,000 on and
You
trade
500x, is that correct?
500x, yeah.
Oh my
So
goodness.
you can put $1,000 on with us and trade a $500,000 position. But once again, you know, and we're not by far, you know, like the biggest leverage in the market. You know, there's people like XNES, for example. XNES is probably the biggest in the world in our industry now. You can have unlimited leverage. You know, if you want 100,000 to 1, then you can get it.
Even with a small, like regardless of a credit score.
No, the credit score doesn't come into it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because you're only leveraging what you've put on account.
So isn't this a losing game for the average trader, the average Joe?
It is. I would say it used to be a much more losing game. I think social media is changing dramatically.
Okay.
I think you can get. You got to remember, 20 years ago there wasn't even a huge sort of buy into the internet at the time. You know, it was still relatively new for 95% of the world, right? You know, if you look at the UK and Europe and the US, it was already adopted, but for the rest of the world, it wasn't. You know. If you look at how traders actually traded then compared to they traded now, it was a much more losing game. I think at one point it was 91% of all traders lose money. Okay. Now with the access to education, access to institutional knowledge, how the markets actually work, strategies, you know, copy trading, things like that, it's dramatically changed things. And I think you can be, if you're clever. Let me put clients into 2 categories because it is important. There are traders, there are gamblers.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. If people want to go, what's the biggest bonus I can get out there? I can get 100% bonus. I stick $1,000 on, I get 2,000 in my account. I'll put the whole lot on gold in one direction. You know, it shoots up by 15%. You're leveraged up, you've made 15 grand, you know. That's definitely a lot of our clientele who come to us. But I would say the majority of our clientele now are much more savvy. They want to know exactly, you know, financial news times, what's happening at the, you know, geopolitically, how a trading strategy specifically works at different opening market times, you know, and I think the market has dramatically changed on that front. But you have to be clever. You know, you have to, and I don't mean clever as in like IQ points. You do have to be clever in the way that you trade. You can't just shoot trades into the market and keep your fingers crossed. You are better probably having a bet on the football, to be brutally honest with you, because you probably have a better fundamental understanding of football than you do of how geopolitics interferes with the price of gold against oil, let's say, you know, or, you know, how safe havens work when it comes to dollar and gold and things like this. And, you know, it's an ever-changing market, but I think now more than ever, along with AI as well, I think you can make yourself a profitable trader, and I do think you can make it not just, you know, a side hustle, but, you know, your day-to-day living.
You have to forgive me once more. Because even in the face of, you know, the BlackRocks of the world, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, some call them a cult, a cartel. They will always be at an information advantage over you.
Of course, yeah.
So this is the last one before we move on to the question. Is it still not a losing battle for the average Joe when they themselves, like you said, have no clue about geopolitical tensions happening in the region between China's tariffs and U.S. tariffs and what's going to happen next? When's the next COVID?
Yeah.
And COVID was obviously a conspiracy. Okay, I'm not going to get into it.
That's a different
another
podcast.
level.
Yeah.
Is it still not a losing battle for the average Joe?
I don't think so, no. Okay. We have clients that are very profitable, you know, and it's not just a handful. We're talking a big percentage of our base are profitable, and consistently profitable.
But are they average Joes? Because if they're businesses, that's different.
You know, I've got to be honest with you. They're retail individuals. Okay. But I'm not on the phone to them, you know, giving them a one-on-one interview like we are having today. You know, but from a standpoint of when you talk about BlackRock and you start talking about some of these massive institutions, you could be Barclays and still lose against them. So you really just don't know what's going to happen when. You're talking volumes that you could never imagine when they trade. Certainly when it comes to equities as well, and it comes to acquisitions. You know, pardon me. There is things that are happening behind the scenes that 95% of even like the banking world don't even know. So
right.
If you're going to think like that, you're always doomed.
Yes.
You know, and like I say, normally a lot of things when it comes to the bigger institutions are built into the market and they're traded in a way that doesn't sort of rock particular markets. But yeah, you can get caught short sometimes. You know, and that's why you have to be clever with things. Yeah, another big thing that people forget about trading. You don't have to go full bore, you know, you don't have to go full account, 50% of your account. We work with a particular educator who has been in the industry for about 14 years. One of the first Forex and trading regulators in the world, his name's Paul Chalmers from UKTA. He is exclusive with us now, another way that we sort of help our underlying client base get the knowledge that they need. But he from a trading strategy perspective, he will only risk or tell his customers if they ask for advice on these things to risk 1%. You know, a high risk strategy for him is risking 3% of the notional amount on his account. So you know you have to lose 30 times to blow your account up. So you know risk awareness, risk appetite. That's something that normally catches clients off guard. I think once again, just the education side of things. If you understand what a risky account or risky trade should be, I think would make maybe the other 50% or whatever it works out to be at the moment of our base profitable. You know. So.
Right. Okay. I'll try and move on because it's been a hot topic and a hot trending thing for me when I get in conversations with people all the time. Okay, let's move on. Do you see AI, the role of AI being a threat or an opportunity for GMS, for Goldstone, because of the fact that people may be using bots?
I can tell you one thing. People have been using bots in our industry for 22 years. Okay, so they're algorithmic bots. We call them EA. That's been something that's been hand in hand with our industry for a long time. I think there is more of a prevalence of AI completely changing the markets as a whole. I think it's a much bigger threat, in my opinion, than people understand. I say threat because you're using the term. It becomes the new norm. You know, I think AI trading will completely change things once they get it right. I think we're a long way off that. That being said, you know, I speak to a partner of mine in Brazil who's heavily adopted AI learning into his business. They've got a call center and they run some sales and things like that. The way that AI is learning at the moment, along with supercomputers and the quantum computing revolution that's coming, I think the whole world will completely change. And I think probably the markets will be the first to do it. It's a data set against a data-driven market. It sort of makes sense. And I do think that it will change things forever. Yeah, I think there will be an unbelievable stabilization of the markets. One of the big things that happens in trading, you get these sort of moments where all of these bots, all of these algorithms, they all go one direction. They misread something. There's been like numerous occasions where it's quite well known, and for no reason at all, no geopolitics, no big trades going through the markets. It will either scream up or scream down to zero for a split second. And that comes from all of these algorithms sort of falling in line. if you think about AI, they're all really run from 4 or 5 data centers in the world. So if you have, 1,000 different models that do that at once, then I think they will learn that if they do that, then they can stabilize the markets and probably, in a way, inside a trade, but off of an AI-driven data set. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think that definitely will happen, by the way. I think that at one point they'll sort of fall in line. All of these different AI, large language models will fall in line, realize that actually between them all, they can probably dictate what the market does, in turn dictate how pricing works, dictate how the profits are taken. And I think at that point, then we have to make a decision to say whether it's a good idea or not. Probably, I'm going to say that the governing bodies will say that it's probably not a good idea because then speculation in the market will completely dry up overnight. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
My thing is just like investing in these AI companies. I think they're here to stay. In all facets of life.
Right. So here's my view on this. So, well, a question actually. Because of the fact that the average Joe, 80% or 70%, I can't remember the stats on this, but 70 to 80% of traders lose their money, right? If this changes now because of AI, surely that's going to affect corporations because corporations don't mind that you lose money on the basis that they still make money regardless. Now, if you do make money, okay, you keep your account or whatever they have to pay you extra probably. But if you lose money, you think corporations care? You think corporations care if you eat McDonald's? No, buy our food. We make profit off of poison.
Yeah.
So now, if this gets eradicated by AI, surely these corporations would be threatened by the AI.
Well, this is what I'm trying to suggest to you. I mean, if all of a sudden the market completely... Let's talk about equities for a moment.
Sure.
Let's say McDonald's. McDonald's, they stop seeing the growth that they're seeing, the year-on-year growth that they need to see to survive. Right. Once again, you have to sort of look at how these algorithmic bots have worked before to sort of know what I'm saying. But if the AI... world, once again, these large language models all speak to each other, and then for whatever reason the market stabilizes or there's controlled growth or something like that, then the corporations will have big issues with it. Who becomes the top, who goes to the bottom, who's worth your dime, it will be dictated by a software.
That's crazy.
Which is bananas.
That's crazy.
But I love it. I'm so excited by what happens next. I'm a big sci-fi guy.
Right.
And these sort of things, we was always warned about it in sci-fi.
We were.
And it's nice it's nice up until it won't be nice, in my opinion, to see it actually come to fruition. But I think the financial markets will be the biggest litmus test of how much lead we give AI models because, like I say, the second that you start taking money out of massive corporations' pockets, and in turn, the governing behind it, and some of the senators and the other people that
playing with fire.
I know
You're playing with fire.
I know, and certainly, I think, especially if they are in control of that governance side of AI as well. Yeah. I think that just like green energy has been sort of held back for many years. Because of the oil industry, I think we'll see AI start to get held back because of these financial markets in turn.
Very interesting. It is fascinating because it does make me reflect on what's the point sometimes.
What, in life?
In life, it's inevitable. We're all gonna be
die.
Controlled,
yeah, exactly.
not just die, but also be controlled by AI. And probably my job's not gonna exist. There's gonna be an animation of me, against my will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when it comes to what am I going to do next, that's something that keeps me up at night.
I think this has been pondered on for a long time, like decades and decades and decades. And the ideal situation is that money stops becoming a thing. There will be 4 or 5 of these big companies that essentially make all of the money, like the Amazons and whoever in the world. AI will be probably the biggest market cap shares in the world eventually. And then what will end up happening is governments will have to dictate to them that we all get a salary from these companies. And then ideally what happens next is we'll become painters, DJs, and soccer players.
So like a reset.
100%. I mean, that's the sort of the green on the other side of the fence. So I think if we got to that stage, then yeah, fantastic. You know, we can focus, because it's not just finance, it's not just business that AI affects, right? It is everything. It's medicine, you know, it's engineering, development, all of it. It's not just one or two industries that will fall by the wayside. It will genuinely be everything, you know.
See, I would hope that instead of the whole, you know, you mentioned painters, creative side of things, you know, an AI can create 1,000 jobs, like 1,000 arts in a second.
Yeah.
DJ can DJ
But
on
is
its
it
own.
art?
Sorry? Yeah, is it art? There's a debate around that.
Yeah, 100%, in my opinion, it's not.
Yeah.
I think the human interaction is very, very
the human
important.
element, the human touch.
100%, because otherwise it's just renderings.
Of course, like for example, if you're going to see Cristiano Ronaldo, you're going to pay your ticket to see Cristiano Ronaldo. If you see an AI of Cristiano Ronaldo, it's not the same.
No, but you know, if that same AI bot is doing, you know, triple somersaults and things like that, then maybe people are going to see it, you know.
Crazy.
You know, it's
scary. It's honestly.
It is. I think I think we're the last of humanity at this point. Probably the next generation that will ever live the way that we do.
Right.
I think the world will significantly change. Yeah. I think exploration will be the next big thing, out into the stars as well. Obviously, we've got Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, you know, pushing for this. I think that's going to be the next sort of step. And like I say, I just think like the general day-to-day manual jobs will go by the wayside. I think, you know, when you can do it cheaper, better, it's always going to go to the forefront. You know, it's happened so many times in history. I mean, you look at the Industrial Revolution, you know, the second we had machines that could do what the man could do for half the price, twice as quick, you know, it was adopted overnight, and that will definitely happen again. There is no reason for it not to happen again. Why would it? The only thing that would stop it is actually, funny enough, like I say, financial markets and things. I think if the governors behind, you know, who make the decisions how things are regulated, they can put a dampener on things. I don't think it will necessarily stop it, but it will definitely hold things up. But yeah, I think we're set to see a massive change in humanity.
Yep. Going into now your personal life, David, do you see yourself in capital markets for the next 10 years going forward? Do you see yourself in this industry? Do you see yourself moving on? What's next for you?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's funny.
Taking into account AI.
Yeah. It's funny because in my 20s, I did think I was going to be pretty much done with finance as a whole. It's an exciting thing to do. From a sales perspective, you know, you have to be a certain kind of human to find the actual industry very exciting. You know, you are just really looking at digits ticking up and down at the end of the day. You know, so I'm not sure what I'd like to do next. There is several things that I'd love to travel. Yeah, of course. Everyone says that, but I would love to travel, not just go and see things, but to immerse myself in different cultures. Okay. You know, I spent a lot of time when I was younger in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and things like that. And yeah, certainly from a space of like living in Dubai and New York and London, you have no idea what the world is about. You truly don't. I mean, you know, if you're in any of these countries or cities, you're in the top 1.1%, not 1%. And to go out there and find out what actual humanity is about is pretty exciting to me. I'm also, like I say, a massive sci-fi nerd, and I collect a load of things. So probably I'll end up owning like a collectible shop with Pokemon in it. Probably.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows?
I'm glad to see the side of you. I mean, obviously, you put on a face when you're at work, when you're in a suit, but there's a vulnerable side that we all have.
100%.
And in that list of aspirations, do you have a place for being a monk?
Probably.
Actually.
Probably. You know, I've gone full circle in my life. I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
I went to Catholic school and things like that. I'm heavily into science as well.
Oh,
you know, I would consider doing my physics degree when at some point I'm dicing with the idea of doing it part-time at the moment, but I got heavily into science and certainly theoretical physics and things like that, which makes you question God. I think it's natural. And I've come to the conclusion that certainly in science, they ask you to believe in one miracle, you know, which is, Joe Rogan recently said it actually, they ask you to believe in one miracle, which is the Big Bang. You know, why can't there be several miracles? And in turn, I've definitely found my faith in later life. You know, I pray every morning.
Oh, wow.
And that's definitely a part of me.
Yeah.
And once again, it sort of feeds into that humanity side of things. So I think actually going out there and seeing, like, you know, what potentially God's creations are like in all forms, it is exciting to me. You know?
It is exciting. It is never ending. There are some never ending questions, like why are the Simpsons able to predict
it's amazing.
things decades away?
It's amazing. So many times.
So many times accurately. Is the Earth actually flat, or is it actually round?
No, it's definitely round.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm into my faith, but not that much.
But have you been out to outer space?
No, but you know, come on, I can. Yeah, no, it's definitely round, mate. Yeah.
So yeah, there are these never-ending questions, and it questions your life and makes you become either more spiritual or look, and it's either two-sided. I gotta pay bills at the end of the day. This is what I gotta focus on. But then there's gonna be a point in your life where, like, I've been doing this for so many times, all my life. Is this literally all there is to life?
100%. I've been there several times as well. You know, I maybe go through that thought process several times a week.
Every time.
You know what I mean? It is I think it's part of the human existence to think that there is always more, and I think that's the reason why we're born explorers. Because is this it? You know, there's got to be more.
Put it this way: if you're not experiencing an existential crisis every 2-3 years, 3 to 5 years, then something's wrong with you.
You should come and do my job. It's every 2 to 3 hours.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it can be pretty intense, to be honest.
Brilliant. I think we'll wrap it there.
Yeah.
Just final remarks on you've already answered, like, what you want to do. For those out there, kids, people in education, students trying to find their passion or their path.
Yeah.
What would be your advice?
Just follow your gut.
Follow your gut.
I mean, it's so cliche to say, but just do what you love.
Yeah.
And actually, the world has changed so much now where you don't have to go down 4 or 5 different revenue streams to earn money in life. You know, you don't have to go into the services, or you're into banking, or into this or scholarship. You know, you can, especially with the influencer side of things, you can do whatever you love and make a living out of it. Doesn't mean you're going to be a multi-millionaire. Maybe you will be, but certainly you can actually carve a living in life.
Brilliant. David, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Very insightful.
Lovely.
Awesome. Just before we wrap up, for those watching, if they're interested in getting in touch, where can they find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, reach out. Happy to have a chat. You know, people want to know anything about me or what we do, or, you know, just generally have a chat. I enjoy talking to people. So.
And the website of your company?
It is gssecurities.io.
Got it. Awesome. All right, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you found this insightful. We'll leave all the links in the description so you can check out David's profile as well as Goldstone Group. Thank you again. I'm Adel, the host, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Web3.tv